There we go. Daf Chof Ches Amud Base, top of the page. Rav Avia Chalash. Rav Avia got sick. V'lo asle pirka de Rav Yosef. And he didn't go to Rav Yosef's shir. Rav Yosef used to give a shir on Shabbos just before Musaf, and Rav Avia was a regular attendee who Rav Yosef really appreciated, and he didn't turn up. The next day when he came, Rav Yosef. So Rav Abaye was very concerned about appeasing and resting the attention or comforting Rabbi Yosef as to why Rav Avia didn't turn up. I'm not quite sure what Rabbi Yosef, was he upset they didn't turn up? Was he worried about him? So Abaya asked Rav Avia, what did Amalei, my time will also Pirka, what was the reason you didn't come to the shir? Amalei, to have a chalish boy. He says, my heart was weak. I wasn't feeling well. And I was unable to come. So says back to Rav Avia Abaye, so why don't you eat something and come? Says Rav Avia back to Abaye, do you not hold of what Rav Huna said, that Rav Huna said that it's forbidden for a person to taste anything before he's prayed the Musaf prayer? So said back Abaye, it was incumbent upon, it was required of you, to the master, to pray the prayer of Musaf, beyachid, by yourself, without the tzibur, ulit midi, have something to eat, ulamaisin, come. Amalei, replied Rav Avia, do you not hold that which Rabbi Yochanan says, don't you hold what Rabbi Yochanan says, that it's forbidden for a person to make his tefillah before that of the community, and therefore I couldn't daven beforehand because the community, the tzibur, hasn't yet davened. Amalei, so Abaye said back to him, Lav itmar lo, Amar Abba, but Tzibur Shani, didn't Rabbi Abba say about that statement of Rabbi Yochanan? That's only if you're in the minyan. You can't daven before them, but if you're not in the minyan, you can. So that's where it ended. So seemingly at the end of the story, this dialogue between Rav Avia and Abaye, Rav Avia had a way out of it. What's beautiful to see is how well reasoned both Amoraim were in terms of their approach. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I didn't feel well and therefore I just turned up. There was a whole kind of reasoning that went into it, which is that the way that the Torah becomes, I suppose, part and parcel of our thinking process. Says beautiful to say the Gemara. That's all I'm going to call it, or part one, which is this Maisa, this story about Abaye and Rav Avia, in the terms of which we learn out their anhagas, and the Gemara is going to summarize what kind of relationship we have to the halachas that they discuss. And that's part two. Says the Gemara, we do not paskin like Rav Huna, that says you can't eat before Musaf, and neither do we paskin like Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Now, Rabbi Shua ben Levi has not been mentioned until now, and that's why the Gemara says, Rav Huna had amaron. Rav Huna, that is what we said above, that you can't eat before Musaf. We do not paskin that way. You can, yes, eat before Musaf, and we don't paskin like Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and he's about to be quoted. Since it has arrived, the time of mincha, it's forbidden for a person to eat anything, to taste anything, until he's davened the mincha prayer, and we do not pass like either of those. You can, yes, eat before mincha, you can, yes, eat before musaf, and we're on to the Mishnah. Reb Nechunya ben Akana, a great Tanya, Reb Nechunya ben Akana, how you mispal, b'knisasoi lebeis hamedrash, uv'yitziasoi tefillah ketzara. Reb Nechunya ben Akana would pray when he entered into the Beis Hamedrash, and when he left it, a small prayer. In other words, obviously this prayer is relevant to his interactions within that study hall where there were lots of people learning together. In the Mishnah, part 2, Amrullah, Ma Malkam the Tefillah Zu. What is the place for this tefillah? Rashi explains what is the nature of this tefillah, and he answers in part 3, Beknisasi ani mispalal shelo yera dvar tokala al yodi. When I enter, I pray that should not occur any matter of something bad, some destructive stumbling block shouldn't occur through me, and as I leave, I show appreciation for my portion that draws to a close. The Mishnah, and the Mishnah is just really an introduction, and this Mishnah and the next Mishnah are going to be including a lot of different prayers that were slotted in here and there to our liturgy. And now the Gemara, which is the third Gemara on the page, is a brisa following the Mishnah and expanding upon it. In his entrance, according to Ibn Bekana, what does he say? He says the following prayer: let it be pleasing in front of you, Hashem, my God. That it shouldn't occur a matter of distraction, of distortion, of perversion through my hands. And I should not fail in halacha. And Rashi explains that these are two separate requests. One is that I should not fail in halacha, and my friends will be happy when I fail. So first of all, I should make a mistake, and if I do make a mistake, I shouldn't cause my friends, the people around me, to gloat over my mistake. And Rashi points out, because I don't want them to be punished because they are mocking me. I do not want to stand something which is impure that is pure, and not something which is pure that is impure. Similarly, I don't want my friends when they shouldn't fail in halacha. And another thing, and if they do, I don't want to be happy about their failure. And that's the prayer that he prayed, and that's the prayer that we all pray when we enter into the Beis HaMedrash. When he leaves, what did he say? I am thankful in front of you, Hashem, my God, that you placed my portion amongst those that sit in the study hall. And you did not place my portion in those that sit literally on the corners. Rashi has two approaches over here. The first approach is shopkeepers or amei haaretz, that they're not engaged in productive conversations. They're talking about unproductive, empty things all day long. And he's showing his thankfulness that that's not the way his conversation is going. He's not talking about rubbish, and he's talking about real stuff. And therefore, it kind of gives me a whole different way of waking up in the morning, and I wake up with a different focus, a different aspiration of elevating myself. Shani mashkim, I get up, and they get up. Ani mashkim, the divrei Torah. When I get up, I'm getting up to learn divrei Torah. I understand the beauty, the power, the depth, the wisdom, and therefore that's something that's really powerful and engaging. Unfortunately, they wake up, and all they're going to speak about is stuff which is vain. It will be here today and gone tomorrow. What a waste of time. I put real effort into what I do, but they also put real effort into what they do. And this seems to be like a different thing, moving away from what they talk about, what they actually do in life. I put in effort and I get reward. They put in effort and they don't get reward. So it's not clear who we're referring to over here. Are we talking about people that work hard at their jobs? If so, people who work hard at their jobs generally get paid. So how can you say they don't get paid? It's quite categorical and seemingly inaccurate. So what is it referring to over here? Very hard to know. Something for you to think about. I'm running and they're running, which means everyone's running. It's a rat race. I'm running, they're running. I'm running to the life of the world to come. And they're running to a well of destruction, which doesn't sound like a nice place to run towards. A lot of questions about this prayer, like why do we need this contrast? Why do we need to discuss what other people are doing? Why don't we just focus on what we're doing right? Why do we have to focus on what they're doing wrong? What is it that they're doing wrong? Who are these people? There needs to be like a lot of discussion in regard to this particular prayer, because I think it's very, very captivating in terms of its mystery. And we go on to the next Gemara, which is the fourth of two stories that happened to two great men as they were breathing their last breaths, and the wisdom they imparted to their students at those very important transitional moments. When it became ill, Rebbe Lezer entered his students to visit him. Amruloi, they said to him, realizing, I suppose, he was about to die, Rabbeinu, our teacher, Lamdeinu Orcho Yischaim, teach us the way of life, the ways of life, and we will be meritorious through them, to merit the world to come. Amar lehem. So Rebbe Eliezer replied without hesitation, this is what you need to do. He's haru b'kvoid chavreichem. Be very careful with the honor, the respect, the attention that you pay to your friends. Umanu b'neichem min hagoyin, and prevent your children from higoyin. Rashi has two pshats. Either with the first one is, don't get your children too involved in learning Tanakh, because it's a very easy thing to learn, and the psukim are extremely intriguing, and they may distract them from learning Torah Sheba'al Peh. And the other one is, don't allow them to become too engaged in childish chatter. Give them a bit of balance of deep and powerful conversations. Obviously, it has to be age appropriate. And place them between the knees of Talmidei Chachamim. Put them on the laps of Talmidei Chachamim. And when you do pray, know in front of whom you stand. And for this, because of this, you'll merit the world to come. Now, if you ask me, like, what are the things that are going to guide me to Olam Haba? I'm not quite sure how many of these I would have thought of as being the crucial components as to what I need to focus on, like my aspirations in life. Are these really them? So that's something for you to think about. What are your goals in life, and how do they overlap with these? And what are these really trying to teach us? Another story, when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai became ill towards the end of his life, they came, his students, to visit him. When he saw them, he began to cry. So for some reason, seeing them brought him to tears. He wasn't crying beforehand. Amrullah Talmidav, his students said to him, Ner Yisrael, the candle of Israel, Amud Hayamini, the right pillar. There were two pillars in the Beis HaMikdash. One was called Yachid and one was called Boaz, and the right one was more important. So they're saying, like, you're one of the pillars of our Torah. Patish Hechazik, the mighty hammer that you can, I suppose, with your logic, destroy false arguments. Why are you crying? Amar lehem, he explains, Ilu, if in front of a king of flesh and blood, they would be taking me. That today is here and tomorrow he's in the grave. And because he's mortal, if he's angry with me, his anger doesn't last forever. So if they're taking him to be judged in front of a king, an earthly king, a mortal king, and you got angry with him, because he's a mortal, his anger can't last forever. And if he puts me in prison, he can't imprison me forever. When he dies, I'll be able to free myself, or someone else may free me. And even if he gives me the death penalty and he kills me, he can't kill me forever, because Jews believe in two worlds. And I can appease him with words. I can bribe him with money. But if I was going in front of this king, I would be so nervous in terms of facing the judgment, I would start to cry. And now, how much more so that they bring him in front of the King of all kings, Hashem, the Holy One, blessed be He, Shuchai v'kayam, that He is alive and He will always be alive, L'olam, forever and forever and ever. If He gets angry with me, His anger will be forever. Quick question, why is it true? Why can't He, if He's angry with him, He can also not be angry with him? Remember, we heard the Gemara early on, which says in terms of Hashem getting angry with the world, it's only for one rega. So this is interesting, what He means over here. And if He captures me, imprisons me, it's forever. And if he kills me, his death is death of eternal death. And I can't appease him with words, neither can I bribe him with money. And therefore, all the things that I could do to a king and I would still be scared, I can't do to Melech Melech Amlachim. So how much more so I should be completely and totally broken by the oncoming judgment. And not only that, I see in front of me two ways. One is going to the Garden of Eden, and one is going to Gehenna, which is purgatory. I'm not quite sure which way they're taking me. And I shall not cry. So this whole description is quite jarring. Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, he lived in the time of the destruction of Beis HaMikdash. He made multiple takonas. He was the leader of Klal Yisrael, like they called him, Nei Yisrael, Patish HaChazak, Amud Hayamini. Really, he really has these doubts, he has these fears, but when you see what he answers to them, it becomes a little bit more clear. Amr lo Rabbeinu Barchenu. So they said to him, our teacher, give us a blessing. Amr lehem, it should be Hashem's will that you should fear people, you should fear Hashem, as much as you fear people. So they were a little bit underwhelmed by his response. Amrullah Talmidov, Adkan, really? That's a bracha. Like our awe of heaven should be the same as our awe of people. Our fear of heaven should be the same as fear of people. I mean, what about more? I mean, you just described this dramatic difference between the spiritual powers of infinite Hashem versus mortality. Amalehem ulavai ahavai. He knew the world. He said, Lavai. And he said, I'll bring you proof that it's only if it would be that. Teidu, and I'll bring you proof. When a person doesn't aver, he says, I hope no one sees me. So in other words, a person has a greater fear of people than Hashem. So if only we could adjust that balance. We're not asking you to have a greater fear of Hashem than people. Okay, that may be asking too much. But at least have the same fear of people as you do same fear of Hashem as you do of people. And just as you're scared to do aver in front of people, be scared to do an aver, a iniquity in front of Hashem. And then the Gemara adds, B'shas B'tirasei, when he was in the process of leaving this world, in the time of his passing, Amar Lehem, he said to the people around him, Pnu kelim min hatuma, take out all the vessels that could become impure, because he's saying about himself that he's about to die, and it's going to make all these vessels impure. And prepare a chair for Chizkiah, the king of Judah, that has arrived in the room to accompany to my final resting place, which is astonishing. He had meaning, I suppose, I'm not sure what his connection to Dafka Chizkiah Melech Yehuda was, and preparing a chair for him. Back in the day, chairs weren't normally sat on by the average person. People sat on the floor. A chair was always a sign of honor. We've kind of assimilated chairs into our normal furniture, but in most cultures, chairs were just a thing to describe a position of authority. So maybe that was the idea. I mean, it's not like, Chizkiah's come and he needs to sit down. So no, that's not what it's about. And we go on to the Mishnah, a brand new Mishnah. Rabban ben Gamliel. Now we have another machlokes where the really dramatic story with Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Shua, and another machlokes between them. Rabban Gamliel Omer, B'chol Yom V'yom Mispal Adam Shmon Esrei. The first opinion is Rabban Gamliel. He says every single day a person has to daven the full Shmon Esrei prayer. Rabbi Shua Omer, main Shmon Esrei. Rabbi Shua says no. You just have to daven the equivalent. We can discuss what that means. We've mentioned it before. It's a summary of the 80 brachos, way shorter. Rabbi Akiva Omer, he's a balance between those two previous opinions. Im shegura tefillah befi, if it's familiar, your prayer in your mouth, meaning you know Shmon Esrei off by heart, mispal Shmon Esrei, then you should daven it. V'im lav me'en Shmon Esrei. If not, if you only know the shortened version, daven the shortened version. Remember, we're talking about a time when there were no sidurim. All of these things were considered to be Torah Sheba'al Peh, and they were not written down. So the way people prayed was they prayed from memory, and therefore there'd be a big discount to people who couldn't memorize the prayers as to what they should do, and that's going to be the subject of this three-way machlokes. The next part of the Gemara, so that's part one of the Gemara, discussing how you should, what kind of formatted prayer should you pray on an average day in your life. And now we have a new point in the Mishnah. A person that makes his prayer fixed, and his prayer is not one of supplication. Now, what is Rabbi Eliezer saying over here? We'll explore this in the Gemara. It seems to be almost an obvious statement. If you're saying your prayer as a fixed commitment, so that's why you're doing it. Obviously, it's not this deep, heartfelt supplication. So exactly what Rabbi Eliezer means remains to be discovered, as what Rabbi Shua says. Rabbi Shua Omer, a person who's walking in a place of danger. This is going to be the third part of our Mishnah. Mispalal tefillah ketzora. He davens a very shortened prayer, and what is the prayer says? He says the following thing: Save Hashem your nation. It's Sheiris Israel, the remainder of Israel. B'chol parashas ha'avor. Now these three words are mysterious. In all the chapter of the passing, what does it mean? The chapter of the transgression, what does it mean? So the Gemara is going to elaborate what these words mean. Just leave the unanswered question to grow, nurture it in the interim. V'chol parashas ha'avor yu tzorcheihem lifanecha. Should their needs be in front of you, Baruch Hashem, shoimea tefillah. Baruch Hashem, that hears tefillah. In the fourth part of our Mishnah, we discuss where should you face in very uncomfortable positions whilst you're davening. Hayorechev ala chamor, and how should you, whilst traveling, relate to your Shmoneh Esrei. Hayorechev ala chamor, you were riding upon a donkey. Yered v'yispal, you have to get off the donkey and daven. V'meinu yochel lered, but perhaps you can't because you're in the middle of, you're going together with a convoy. It would be unsafe for you to stop. Yachzir Panov, you should turn your face towards Jerusalem and pray whilst you're on the donkey. And if you can't turn your face towards Jerusalem, then you should turn your heart towards the house or the Holy of Holies. Next halacha, which is part 5. You are traveling on a ship, or on a raft. So I suppose the ship and the raft is much harder to gauge your direction. Could be turning could be rapidly turning the whole time, so it's not going in a particular direction. So therefore, you should just aim your heart in the right direction, and that is sufficient. Continues the Gemara, and it looks for a precedent of these Shmoneh Esrei. Where do we get them from? Hani Yudches Keneged Mi. These, Gemara begins with a question. These 18 brachas, in relation to whom did we establish them? The Gemara has a premise that you can't just, the format of tefillah wasn't just randomly set up. There must be some kind of precedent in something that allowed this engineering to take place. So in relation to who and what was it designed? Part 2 is an answer. Amar Hillel, first answer, Breder B'Shmuel Ba'Nachmani, Keneged Yudches Askares Amar David B'Havil Hashem B'nei Elim. It's in relation to the 18 times the name of Hashem is mentioned in the chapter of Tehillim 29, where it says Havil Hashem B'nei Elim. We say this just before Lechadoidi on Kabbalah Shabbos. Very famous. We say it when you take the Torah back on Shabbos as well. A very special and famous kapitel Tehillim, and it mentions the name of Hashem 18 times, and that's why we had 18 brachas. Now, why does those 18 names of Hashem, why Dafka, this particular chapter of Tehillim, that's the source of Shmoneh Esrei? That's something for you to think about. You can do that when you're davening, when you're davening Kabbalah Shabbos, or they're taking the Torah back. You can think, whoa, what are these? What does this mean? And you're going to nurture and grow the question, which is the foundation of all learning, is nurturing the question, the power of the unanswered question. Second answer is Rabbi Yosef, Amar Keneged Yudches Askar Shebekriya Shema. It's parallel to the 18 mentions of Hashem's name in the reading of the Shema. Amar Tanchum, Amar B'Shua ben Levi Amar. Rabbi Tanchum, I think the back changes it, that Rabbi Tanchum in the name of Rabbi Shimon Levi says, Keneged Shmoneh Esrei Chulyos Shebeshidra. It's in relation to, it's to parallel to the 18 vertebra in a person's spinal cord. Very different. And why the spinal cord? I mean, we know that's kind of the pillar of the person in all. First of all, from an anatomical perspective, that's true. And from a, I suppose, the yogis say that the spine is the core and that's what you have to work on. So what's it going to do with Shmoneh Esrei? Is it because it's the spinal cord of our spiritual world and therefore it has to match up with it, and each bracha is like another vertebra? How does it work? Or is it because we bow down in Shmoneh Esrei? Really enormous amounts to think about on this page, and in general there's just so much. In other words, we can actually wake up in the morning for Divrei Torah because there's really so much to think about and to play around with in our heads. Now we're going to the next Gemara of Amar Tanchum, Amar B'Shua ben Levi, Hamispalel Tzarech sheyichra. A person that is davening, he should bow down ad until they stretch out all his vertebrae. So his bowing down should be all the way through until he stretches out his entire spine. I'm going to stop there for now. We're going to continue, please God, the rest of the Gemara and going on to Chaftes. And in the meantime, stay strong, stay well. Keep on asking those questions, all those questions about, Torah, and thinking about them, and that will be beautiful. Be well.